What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Play the Fight Song College Football Show. Another big-time preview week is upon us. It is time to talk the Mountain West Conference, the 2024 representative in the college football playoff with the Boise State Broncos. Obviously, a very important conference to cover. Joined alongside my week-to-week co-host, JP and Jake. We're excited to break down this conference tonight. Before we talk to them and about these teams, we want to remind you to shop No Rivals, our great partner over at No Rivals. Awesome hats, awesome designs, adding teams by the day. They're updating designs throughout the season. A lot of stuff going on over there at No Rivals. So shop norivals.com today. And when you find the hat you love, use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping on all of your awesome new college football hats. Get ready for the season. Shout out No Rivals. Jake, how are we doing? We get to talk a little bit about your Colorado State Rams. Got the upside down Rams, No Rivals cap on. How are we feeling about the Mountain West?
Yeah, I think it's always an exciting G5 conference to cover. We have my de facto team on deck with the Rams. Excited to break those guys down a little bit. High expectations. Just trying to pull up the over-under odds for win totals for the Mountain West here on
A little late.
Undisclosed betting service, because I think it is important, because there are a lot of win totals I think that are worth mentioning for this league, because I think it's very fascinating, and we probably have the best G5 team in this league. So
if you're in the comments or watching live tonight, let us know what sports book you use legally, please. Let us know what your preferred book is, and we'll try and use that one, maybe partner with them throughout the season so we can have their odds on tap for you week to week. GA's in the chat tonight. Shout out GA. Shout out to anybody joining the live show tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, head over to that, hit the subscribe button. We are on the road to 1,000, and we are getting inches and inches away.
Less than 20.
Yeah, less than 20. We need the last push there. So hit the subscribe button today. We appreciate you more than you know. JP, how are we doing tonight? Ready to break down the Mountain West? Any teams that stick out to you, brands that you love in this conference?
Hey, there's great brands all over this conference. I just want to say I did not expect to get the hate I got this week, not from this conference, but from another team out there.
Literally Big 12 Iowa. Big 12 Iowa went at JP. That's the funniest thing.
I just couldn't believe it. I mean, all I said is that Chris Klieman would get a call from Iowa here in the next 4 years when Ferentz retires. That's all I said. And
Also
you would have
stupid,
thought I sat there and lit their dog on fire.
Wait, I didn't see any of this. What did you? Yeah. What did they say?
Well, JP runs his mouth, says something stupid, of course.
No,
so,
relax, Jake. It's not stupid in the slightest. So I believe it was Brett McMurphy just tweeted out something that Klieman said at Big 12 Media Days. He got asked about his Iowa roots or of some sort, and he said, "Let me just get this clear." Klieman's like, "I wasn't an Iowa fan. I was not an Iowa State fan. I went to UNI, or I'm a UNI Panther." That's basically what he said. He said I was a Panther fan. That's all. That's all it said. And so I replied to it and I go, "Don't worry, you'll get a call from Iowa City here in the next couple of years." And these people, I tell you what, you're too broke. That's news to me that Iowa's more broke than Kansas State is, by the way.
You guys are in debt. Like that's a fact.
I think they're going to be just fine. And then Kansas State fans are like, well, he actually coaches for teams that can score points. That's why you would hire a guy, right? Isn't that the whole point of why? And then it was just stupid. I was like,
hey, that's the passion.
So mad.
That's the passion.
He's getting poached. Kansas State fans, you can write this down, put it on all your bulletin boards. He will not be at Kansas State for the rest of his career.
Whoa!
Yeah. You're gonna turn some heads with that.
Now you're gonna piss him off again.
Isn't Iowa a school already victim to already being written into contract with alma mater ties? Isn't in Bielema's contract that he can't go coach at Iowa? Yeah. Am I wrong on that?
That's a real thing. It's a Big Ten. Yeah, it's a Big Ten.
Okay, so it's the Big Ten.
Non-compete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would ever sign that.
Go get Bobby Stoops. Let him live up to that tattoo. Bobby Stoops has an Iowa tat on the back of his leg.
Bielema's got one. I mean, there's Mark Stoops out there. I mean, there's ties everywhere. It's just a really long coaching tree when you have two guys there for 20 plus years. It's just how it works.
All right, we need to make a pin in that. If Klieman ends up at Iowa, all those accounts have to.
I didn't say he was going to edit. Yeah,
you need to bookmark.
I didn't even say that. I just said he'd get a phone call. That's all I said.
It's a fair guess. He
probably don't touch him. Don't even talk about him.
Yeah, they love him.
Don't touch it.
Shout out to guys that. Yeah, I'll say maybe Cocaine Willie, if they ever check this video out, can comment on that. Our friends over there.
I can't imagine that would make them happy based on the Twitter feed I got off.
I love the shameless plug. I want to go back to it. Jake's been doing an awesome job with this summer series. Go check it out. Iowa State Fan Perspective. He's previewing the teams on Iowa State's schedule. He's previewed 4 or 5 so far. So go get a look at those teams. You get their fan opinions of Oklahoma State, Kansas State, BYU, Colorado, teams like that. So check that out on the channel right now and hit the subscribe button while you're there. Good work on that from the fan perspective. And JP and I, we were going to be doing ours. We're just not as dove in as Jake is. Dedicated man. We appreciate him and we appreciate you. All right, let's go into the Mountain West. Let's get this started. We got a lot of teams to cover, a lot to talk about. We'll give you our conference championship picks at the end. But first, let's start it off with the team on, it's either my right or left. I think my image is mirrored. But let's talk a little Colorado State Rams. Jake, you're going to take us through them. Tell us about this team and Braden Fowler and Nicolosi here in 2025.
Yeah, like I said before, I think this is a big year for Jay Norvell and Braden Fowler, Nicolosi. They crossed the bowl, I guess the bowl appearance off of their list, beat a couple of rivals along the way. I think fans were happy about 2024, but I don't know if they were fully satisfied. You kind of dropped, you laid an egg against Colorado. Didn't even come close to competing when you went to Austin against Texas. Now, Texas was one of the best teams in college football, but I think the expectation at Colorado State is to consistently compete for Mountain West titles. And they had a shot at the end of the year, and they got absolutely the score wouldn't indicate it, but they got kind of dominated by Fresno on the road against a team in Fresno who was – you're not going to get Fresno that down in this era of college football. So you had to take advantage of that, and you lost your shot at taking UNLV's spot for the Mountain West title. I think everything is still on the table this year. I think that is still the expectation. What's the offense going to look like? It was more run-centric last year with Matt Mumme as offensive coordinator. I think they are going to try and go back to the pass-heavy air raid style that Mumme and his, belated father are used to, and Hal Mumme. So expect Braden Fowler, Nicolosi to have high expectations from this fan base entering year 3. He's a guy that I think needs to get on that all-conference ballot in order to have a successful season for the Rams. He didn't put up huge stats last year like he did a couple of years ago. Like I said, with Torrey Horton going down middle of the season, early in the season, they really relied on those running backs. So I think they replenished the receiving room a little bit, and now it's on BFN to really sling it and have another 3,000-yard season. But on the other side, though, I think the staff really likes the running backs. Justin Marshall, Jalen Dupree, just a couple of young guys who I think that they can trust. And you need a little bit of balance. You might be a pass-heavy offense, but you're going to want to run the football a little bit. I think they like their offensive line, but you need a little bit of balance if you're going to have success throwing the football. The receiving room is really interesting. Like I said, you lose an all-timer in Torrey Horton, who went down last year, enters the NFL draft. You bring in a guy like Kojo Antwi, Ohio State transfer. Now, I'm not necessarily even sure he's going to really crack the 2 deep, but it's interesting because he makes the 3rd receiver in this room that was a former 4-star. Like, there is some blue chip recruiting profile to this receiving room. Jordan Ross returns. I think he's going to be really good. You look at a guy like, I forgot his name already. Oh, Armani Winfield is another one you want to look out for. And then the tight ends, I think, could be used in the red zone a ton. Everybody's going to know the name just because of his name. Second string tight end, Rocky Beers. Yeah, he's going to get some. He's going to get some love. He's going to get some playing time. So look out for him as well. Defensively, completely different story. Only 2 guys really returned that had starting experience or a bunch of reps under their belt, and it is a group that's going to be a lot of transfer-heavy group. They're switching to a 3-4 defense, Norvell said, so we'll see there. A couple of Big 12 linebacker transfers, Jacob Ellis from Iowa State and Jaquez Evans from Baylor, 2 guys who I think will start right away and could have immediate impact. Evans plays more of the edge rusher, but he also does kind of play that outside linebacker in the 3-4. Jacob Ellis, I thought was serviceable for Iowa State, so I think he's an upgrade in the Mountain West. The secondary is going to be pretty green. Like, this is a young bunch. You got to replace a guy like Blackburn. I think everybody remembers he was the guy that hit Travis Hunter a couple of years ago. He was a really good player. He was a really good safety outside of just that one play he was known for. A.J. Noland, a freshman, stepping into his role. He's going to have to show up and fill some shoes, and he could be a really good player down the road for Norvell. Like I said, guys, They led this team to their first 8-win season in 10 years. You crossed that mark, but it's back to competing for conference titles. And Vegas doesn't think so because you're at 6.5 at your over-under win total at plus 130 for your over. So Vegas doesn't even know if you're going to really get to the 6-win mark, which is interesting. If you're Jay Norvell, you got to beat your rivals. Colorado's not on the schedule this year. You got to beat Air Force at home again. You have to beat Wyoming. Like, you have not had a better time in your tenure where both of those programs are down. Those are two historic programs in the Mountain West that are really good, but they're just down right now. And if you're Colorado State, you got to take advantage of it. And let's see how legit this team is, fellas. You look at the schedule. If you're fighting for a Mountain West title again in the middle of November, you have a trip at Boise, second last week of the year. It ain't even like at Fresno. It's a whole different beast. It's going to be cold. I think you missed Boise last year, so you lucked out there when you missed the conference title. So it's do or die now. I don't know if Jay Norvell's in the hot seat, but it's like I think if you get to 7 wins, I don't know if Colorado State fans are going to be that satisfied again. I think from what I've read and what I've heard, I think it's 8 wins and competing in the Mountain West. That's the expectation with this group.
I feel like when I looked back at Colorado State last season and the preview that we gave and the excitement going into the year of Fowler Nicolosi and Torrey Horton, and then it just didn't feel like it panned out because of that Colorado game. But then like week 8 rolled around and I flipped on the TV and like first place Colorado State, who
rattled off 5 in a row
in the conference, and I think they were playing at San Diego State or something like that. I was like, man, I got to look back into this team, and they actually played incredibly well. So I think if they can build off that, obviously they lost a few pieces like you mentioned, they're going to be competitive. And so that win total shocked me too. Great breakdown, Jake. Any thoughts on the Rams, JP?
For me, this one's tough, and I know Jake is a little bit of a truther within the Colorado State realm, right? He'll tell you how it is with that fan base and how that program operates and his honest opinions on Norvell as well. I will say that it's a fan base that's kind of untapped in college football. Like, it's very passionate. They very much want to win games. And so Jake's saying, like, Mountain West, compete for that title. Real thing. I will say last year, I didn't think they were that good of a football team. I think they benefited from a really weak Mountain West and that schedule that helped them a ton. So to say that this team is going to be better is possible, but the numbers may not show it or the record may not show it. And I think that's something that either Colorado State fans need to buy into and understand, or it's just uphill. Like, I think it's a real uphill year for it. It feels like not a gap year, but a gap, or I don't know. I don't even know how to explain this year and how I'm looking at it.
The expectations are high because this is a team that's going to the Pac-12. Like, this is one of the new Pac-12 teams. And those teams and those fan bases think they're just a step up above the Mountain West right now. So if you go 5-7 and you're losing to teams like New Mexico, like Wyoming, that's going to piss off the fans because they're like, we're going to this new league. We expect to be the cream of the crop at the end of this Mountain West run.
All right, that is Colorado State. Let's keep it moving. We're going to flip it over to JP. JP is going to take us through one of his favorite brands in the conference. He's actually visited this stadium. JP, tell us a little bit about the Wyoming Cowboys headed into the 2025 season.
Hey, GA, I appreciate you jumping in and talking Wyoming early here in our Mountain West preview. But let's talk a little Cowboys, because this would be my de facto team out in the Mountain West. Laramie's a beautiful place. I know some people that moved out there, got a chance to go out there and tour the stadium on my own 2 feet without an actual tour guide. Thanks for leaving the gates unlocked, fellas. Hopefully we'll be back there not too far down the line. You look at kind of what Wyoming was over the last 10 years or so, and then what it was last year is a little bit of a difference, and it was evident. And there's one thing about Laramie, along with what's going on in Fort Collins, it's a fan base that wants to win. It doesn't really take well to losing. Let's just be completely honest about it. Even so, or more so here in Laramie, as it's a fan base this is the one big school in town. This is the school for the state. This is a real fan base who has seen good basketball success, has seen good football success, and football is kind of where everything lies within this. Going to the second year here at Jay Sauble, a program that did not, kind of get rolling lonely. 3 wins a season ago. It's built on playing hard. It's built on being gritty. You outwork your opponent. You're a lot tougher than your opponent. They want to run the football well. They want to play great defense. And losing, again, doesn't fly here. It's something Sauble knows. He knows he got to get it back under wraps. But it was a weird year for them last year. I really think that things just didn't quite go in the right direction. Looking to the offensive side, Kate Anderson ended up taking most of the starting gig after the real struggles with the offense and what Evan Svoboda did last year. If you remember pretty high on Swoboda going into the season based on the arm talent and his real ability to kind of move around in the pocket and make plays happen with his legs. Well, offense struggles a ton. Things aren't really rolling. They're losing football games. Turns out Caden Anderson's the guy they're going to roll with, and that looks like they're going to go that way into the fall. Swoboda actually moved to tight end here in the offseason, which is he's got the body for it. Let's just be completely honest. He's a real athlete, so it should fit there. There is a couple things here in the running back room that I think that there's some real happiness to be a part of. Sam Scott, I did miss spring ball, but it's a guy who last year was really talented out there, and they're really happy to have a good running back because they need a workhorse in this kind of offense, right? We won the football well, we own the trenches, we play good defense. That's the whole thing. That kind of stops when you don't have a running back or an offensive line to really supplement that. I mean, you talk about Wyoming in past years, it's been a quarterback that's been pretty gritty, a good offensive line. And I mean, let's be honest about it. Like, some really good, talented tight ends and running backs throughout the years. Go to the wide receiver and tight end group. It's a position group that's gotten a lot of offseason love. And I think we've said that about a couple teams throughout all of our previews. But there's a guy that a lot of teams don't have is John Michael Gillenborg. He's going to be an all-Mountain West guy. He's going to have a real shot to work to be an All-American in certain listings. Chris Durr, Jalen Sargent are poised for breakout years. I listened to a couple shows with some Wyoming beat writers. These are guys that are standing out, and it's something Wyoming lacks for a lot of years. It's like a really good outside threat outside of the tight end position, right? You need a good receiver to supplement that and kind of bail you out in certain situations when the offense isn't rolling. Offensive line returns 3 guys, a ton of shuffling from a season ago. 9 guys got playing time, and the hopes are that the health and the continuity kind of rolls into this year and things look a lot better in the run game. Again, like, Savo's going to run the football. They're going to do what Wyoming does, and they're not going to change who they are or who they are as a brand for sure. Defensively, right? 11 of 14 guys who saw 250 plus snaps a season ago hit the door. The staff feels like there's more talent in this room or in these rooms now. We're on this unit. Not really sure how that correlates. I'm just telling you what the coaching staff's been telling people. That might be a possibility of, a little addition by subtraction, and maybe some guys who've been in the system a little longer and talent comes with it. Front 6 filled with some transfers, 2 new linebacker starters. They're going to come in from smaller schools. I think that's something to note anytime it happens within these G5 conferences. A lot of these smaller schools, experienced guys that get bumped up to the G5, a lot of them are hits because they've played a ton of football, right? You got Braden Johnson coming in from Oklahoma Baptist, and Ethan Stuhlsatz, I think is how you say his last name. He came from Lindenwood, 2 tackling machines. Gary Rutherford was there at Wyoming a season ago. Another guy has gotten a ton of snaps, and they're pretty high on, to be honest with you. Inexperienced defensive backfield. I'd say this is one of the larger concerns for the Cowboys going into this year. It's going to need to grow quick. You can't get beat over the top in the Mountain West. There's too many quarterbacks and receiver rooms that can really get you. And it's something that Wyoming looks to really work and, just use position battles to fuel the fire and get yourself in a good spot going into the fall. A couple defensive players that I think people should know about: Dante Drake. A lot of turning heads during the spring. He plays defensive tackle. And the defensive end, Braden Wilson. He's a Weber State transfer, 2-time All-Big Sky guy. Got to get to the quarterback. Got to be able to, if you're not going to be great on the back end, let's make sure we can get to the quarterback in certain spots, right? Offensively, I think it's a year where if you can just get Anderson comfortable, really rely on Scott being good, offensive line takes improvement, I think that'll just naturally get better, having more guys in the system for more years. Defensively, it's odd to see a bad Wyoming defense. I don't imagine that happening again, but how much does it improve? What's the real margins on that improvement right there? Schedule-wise, man, I mean, you look at the schedule, and I think GA even said it here in our comments, was like, that schedule is no joke. And I agree with you, GA. It's front-loaded, to be completely honest with you, right? Let's start with a Thursday night at Akron. I know Akron's not, a world beater or whatnot, but it's a Thursday night game. You're traveling over to Akron. And then you get a front-loaded Mountain West schedule with UNLV, San Jose State, at Air Force, Colorado State. Now, no Boise. That's nice. Everybody would enjoy that. But I think the front end of that schedule is tougher. So you really need to work if you want to have a chance to get bowling to win a decent amount in that front end of that Mountain West schedule, and then work your way into that back end with, feeling comfortable and not feeling like you need to really grind anything out and get anything gross.
Yeah, that's a fantastic breakdown. And honestly, on the positive side for what I thought of the schedule as well, it's such a passionate fan base, which you mentioned several times, but it's deservingly so. Like, it's an older fan base, but the people of that town really do care about the program. So it's one that I agree with GA. I want to get back to the point that they were, where they were consistently winning football games, where like if you had to travel out to Wyoming, that trip to Laramie was a little bit of a somewhat of a pencil circle of like, we got to go to this tough environment within the G5. And it's a team that's so hard nosed that they could take it to you any given Saturday. So hopefully they can get back on their feet. I think they'll be a little bit better than last year. I mean, they had some rough spots. So I thought it was a good breakdown there. Any thoughts on the Cowboys, Jake?
Yeah, I think a lot of pressures on Sawville, but the one nice thing you saw at the end of the year was there was still a lot of fight, and the defense still played pretty well and got better towards the end of the year. It's just the offense for me that still leaves me in question. I know you're giving, was it Anderson, a new shot? He finally takes over as the full-time guy. Tight ends are really good, but like, what do we know about the receivers? The receivers sucked last year. They were not good. One of the worst, probably the worst group outside of Air Force in the Mountain West, if we're going to be completely honest.
For sure.
You get starters back on the offensive line, but it's kind of like, what's our famous Stanford Steve quote there, JP? Just because you would get production back doesn't mean it's good production.
Returning starter doesn't mean returning production.
Yeah, returning good production. I'm a little, maybe it's offensive line. Maybe they need more continuity, and this year they click. But right now, if the offense doesn't get going again, I just don't know how much the defense can win games for you at this point.
All right, that is Wyoming. Good breakdown there. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to a team not picked so highly in the conference, and that is the Utah State Aggies. I'll get to cover the Aggies tonight. Tried to reach out to various Aggie accounts. Got one response, didn't get a response back after I asked some questions, so hopefully I'll do my best for Utah State fans who are pretty dedicated fan base themselves. But let's take a look at Utah State, and for the final time, we get to preview them as a part of the Mountain West Conference. But we got to talk a little bit negative about where this program is just because they're in year one. They went 4-8 last year, 3-4 in the conference, and they bring in a new head coach. And an entire new coaching staff hits the school, started with Bronco Mendenhall at the head coach position. It's their first year there, head coach at New Mexico last year. He's actually been in various head coaching spots. He was with Virginia for a while, BYU for a while. I unfortunately got to be a part of the BYU upset at Nebraska when Bronco Mendenhall was coaching at BYU. So it's a guy who's won in his career. He's a 117 game winner, and we'll see what he can bring in. At the offensive coordinator position, they bring Kevin McGivern. He was at San Jose State since 2018 as their pass game coordinator most recently in 2024. And if you know anything about San Jose State, which we'll talk about later in the show, they love to pass the ball. So we're going to kind of get an identity of a given identity with this Utah State team maybe going forward, but we'll kind of wait and see with what they brought in. At the defensive coordinator side, they have Nick Howell, came with Bronco Mendenhall from New Mexico, also be their active safeties coach, so kind of a dual action guy, but we'll get into maybe some of the struggles I expect from them on that side of the ball. This program missed a bowl game last year, and they're really looking to get their first bowl game, get back to their first bowl game and win a bowl game since 2021, where they ripped off 11 wins. I think people forget about that team. But it's a team that's had success even before then, and the fan base is kind of like entering that, realizing that it's maybe time for just rebuilding. We're again in that conversation of talking about a G5 program that has had a complete overhaul, whether it's a coaching staff, whether it's the players. They bring in 30-plus transfers this year, but they do have some exciting multi-stop Power 4 guys, and we'll see if they can mesh them up. On the offense, let's start there. Let's start at the quarterback position. Bryson Barnes, the expected starter, he returns this year. He started 3 games for him last year is all, but he played in a lot. They really rotated through 3 quarterbacks last year, including Spencer Petras, who was like 28 years old, it felt like. But Bryson Barnes expected to be the starter. He was pretty good in his appearances. I threw for just over 850 yards and 12 touchdowns with only 6 picks, which is a bright spot on this team, is that only 6 interceptions because they threw a ton last year. So they'll need to see a transfer over for this season. The running backs, there are a couple transfers in this room. Trying to replace a 7-game, 100-yard rusher in Raul Faison. Faison, 7 games, over 100 yards. You got to replace that. And I'll reference it a couple of times tonight, but I kind of think of what are we trying to replace like in a Moneyball fashion? It's not just the guy, but also what he brought with him. And they've got to replace him with a couple of guys. One, Jevin Jacobs, the New Mexico running back. He was really kind of a limited role for that really good New Mexico offense that ripped off 5 wins, which for New Mexico feels like 15. And then Miles Davis, not the version that pees his pants from Billy Madison. Shout out that movie. But he had an impact for BYU last season, who is decent on the offense side of the ball, but saw their struggles, looking to take more of a principal role within this offense this season. The offensive line is my biggest worry for this offense as a whole. I mean, you get that new battery. You got Bryson stepping in at quarterback, looks like full time. Get the couple new backs, but the offensive line, complete overhaul. Full G5 version here. Maybe not the worst thing in the world because they had their struggles, but if the group doesn't mesh together, things can go south really fast. Guys get injured. All of a sudden, you're in big time trouble again, record-wise. On the outside, they lost Jalen Royals to the 4th round of the NFL draft. He went to the Chiefs. He was one of the better receivers in the G5. Huge miss for them. What did they replace him with? Some transfers, some inexperienced transfers on the outside. One guy I do want to note, Brady Boyd from Texas Tech. I think he can be something. He was a 3-4-star guy coming out of high school. Didn't have a lot of experience at Texas Tech, redshirted 1 year. Now he comes over to Utah State. And I think he can be somewhat meaningful within this offense when Bryson Barnes does throw the ball. But I do think it'll be a run-first look this year, besides what the offensive coordinator previously liked to do at San Jose State. On the defensive side of the ball, this is where we run into some issues, and I kind of got to get negative. Last year, this team defensively was dreadful, ranking 129th in the country, giving up 40 points per game. And you might say, why are we talking about last year? We just said we got a new defensive coordinator. Sorry, the defensive coordinator you brought in was 127th in the country. He gave up 38 points a game over at New Mexico. So this is the big question mark on the team where the fan base's worry is, and it's for good measure. I mean, we usually tell you, hey, here's a few guys to watch out for. I don't know if there's anything on this sheet. Like, it's really got to be a group effort just to take a small step forward to progress this Utah State team. They gave up 300 yards through the air last year. So I think the secondary is where the focus should be. Limit that. Make them run the ball, slow the game down, and then you can kind of find yourself in more battles than what you got into last year when you were giving up 40 a game. So I think the defense is obviously the biggest thing to worry about for a Utah State fan. Maybe it's not a terrible thing that you only brought back 3 starters on the defensive side of the ball. When you want to talk about returning productions, maybe not always good production. Well, terrible returning production, you barely have any of it. So maybe that's a good thing. We can follow the Stanford Steve model for this team as well. But the changes that Utah State needs all becomes on the defensive side of the ball for me. We'll see how Bronco can do it in year one. But I do think they're picked towards the bottom of the conference for good reason, for all the question marks around. And they really didn't make any jump off the page transfer moves or anything like that in my mind, other than some young Power 4 guys. For the schedule, I think it's a little iffy. They go on the road at Texas A&M, on the road to Hawaii, on the road to Vanderbilt. They go on the road to UNLV. I think the last 3 games of the season where if you were to find enough success to maybe flirting with bowl eligibility, 4 wins or 5 wins, all of a sudden you rip off at UNLV, at Fresno, and then you're at home against Boise State. Things can go really ugly really quickly. So I don't think the Utes get bowl eligible this year. I think 4 or 5 is the ceiling is what it feels like, just because it's so early in Mendenhall's tenure. So we'll see what they can do on the field this year. Jake, any thoughts on the Aggies?
I think wait. I think you got to correct yourself. I think you slipped Utes in there.
I did.
Yeah, I think you just Freudian on accident. You're good. I just want.
Hey, they would rip me for that. No, make sure this makes the clip.
If somebody said
I appreciate that.
If somebody said Iowa State Hawkeyes, yeah, I'd let them know.
Somebody's done it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'd rather save us than
Nope. I appreciate that. Don't come for me or my family, please. That's my mistake. Hand up accountability.
They're from Utah. Right. They're not going to hurt you. They're nice.
Jake, what's your thoughts on this team, the Aggies?
Yeah, Broncos kind of got a similar situation to where he did in Albuquerque last year. Can he surprise some people? We'll have to wait and see, because I like Devin Dampier a lot more than I like Bryson Barnes if you're going to try and put up points, because I don't think this defense is going to be much improved this season. I like the hire. I think Mendenhall knows the state of Utah. He's going to recruit well. He's going to turn this thing around. But year one could be ugly, which is weird because Mendenhall is more of a defensive guy. But like you look at New Mexico last year, and it was all offense, no defense. Mm-hmm. Kind of could be the same thing this year. He brings over his defensive coordinator from New Mexico, but guess who he doesn't bring over? He doesn't bring over Jason Beck, who went over to Utah with Devin Dampier, is going to call plays at Utah now. So he doesn't have his offensive coordinator. Can they put up points? It's going to be the biggest question, I think.
If there was a tall tale sign to not bring a defensive coordinator, you kind of have the parting of ways to not give him the boot, but give him the boot. This might have been the case because that group was brutal.
It makes me think maybe this is more of Mendenhall's hands on it, and he just wants his guy at defensive coordinator to kind of, make good insight, that kind of thing. I don't know, but it's just maybe that's why he brought him over, because it clearly wasn't because New Mexico was better on defense than offense last year.
Yeah, it's the main concern for sure. All right, JP, your thoughts on Utah State quickly.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's going to take a year or two, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just takes a patient fan base. And another one in the Mountain West that's used to winning. That's a big bowl streak that got broken.
Yep, absolutely. All right, that is Utah State. Let's keep it moving. We're going back over to Jake. Jake is going to take us through that team we mentioned multiple times. Let's talk a little Lobo football over in New Mexico. Jake, take us through them.
Yeah, let's talk about the FCS All-Star team, or at least that's what I've heard people refer this team as. I am interested to see what is going to happen in Albuquerque again this year. I think that this team could surprise a lot of people in the Mountain West. Over-under still set at that 3.5 mark. I think last year it was 2.5. Let's see if they can get back to 5. 6 wins would be a shock, but I think that would be a massive win for first-year head coach Jason Eck, who comes over from Idaho, takes over Bronco Mendenhall, who we just talked about. This is Eck's first role as an active head coach in the FBS, was in the system over at South Dakota State, was really good at Idaho for a while, had them rolling in the playoffs as a good FCS program. We'll see what he can do this year. I think he's going to want to run the football. That's going to be projected number one priority on offense. He's a former offensive lineman. He prides his offenses on running the football and having that be the best position group on the field. He wants his offensive linemen to be in sync all at once, and I think that's a good style to bring over in the Mountain West. He loves his running backs, though, really does. Scott Trey Humphrey, Montana State, I just said FCS All-Stars. This could be the best of that bunch. A Montana State transfer at running back. He stood out in the spring, killed New Mexico last year, if you guys remember, in that Week 0 game. Expect him to be the lead back. Expect him to maybe be like Mountain West newcomer of the year, because he could really be that good if he stays healthy. But Eck brings over a couple more guys from his Idaho team. His quarterback, Jack Lane's coming with him. Deshaun Buchanan. And Eck's bringing over his son, Jackson Eck. He plays linebacker over at Idaho. He's going to be solid. I think he's going to start at inside linebacker for his dad. They're going to run a 4-2-5. The defensive ends are going to have to be the strength of this 4-2-5 group. He even mentioned, I listened to a New Mexico podcast where he talked about it. He highlighted a guy like Darren Agu. This is a Vanderbilt transfer. I think he loves him at the defensive end. Said he stood out in the spring. Keep in mind, while that guy stood out in the spring, and so did Humphrey, this guy in this program brought in a ton of new guys in the spring portal. So I don't think anybody's job secured. I don't even really think Lobos fans have an idea of what this roster is going to look like, which is kind of why I see them and why they're at the 3.5 mark. I do think, looking at the schedule, it's tough sledding. It's really tough sledding. You got to go to Ann Arbor to start off your career. Get Idaho State at home. I think that's obviously a winnable game, but you lost to Montana State last year. Idaho State still a step down from the Bobcats, but still, nonetheless. Then you go to at UCLA. You got to play Nico. We'll see there. And then you get New Mexico State at home. Your in-state rival. I think you can beat them. So 2-2 has got to be the non-conference slate. And then you have at Boise, at San Jose, you have at Air Force, you have at UNLV. So you're playing the 3 top teams in this league on the road. I really do think this team could be solid, like as solid as a 4-5 or a 4 or 5 win competitive Mountain West team could be. Just like brutal at UCLA, at Michigan, and then at the top 3 teams in your conference. Like, can we get a break there? And you get Colorado State on your schedule. So the top 4 teams.
It's a great breakdown. I think in New Mexico, and my immediate thought is, where the program was at and then what they got out of it last year. Like, we talked about them incredibly highly early in the offseason. Like, getting to the point that they did was like unheard of and unexpected because of their quarterback play, and similar to like a Troy a couple of years ago or some other program, Marshall. Like, all of a sudden it's cleaning house, but like they weren't even that good, but they did good enough with the capabilities that they had at that program that somebody else wanted them. So I hope it didn't kick them back down the road like to the point they were at before last season, just for the fan base's sake, because it would be awesome to have a good program come alive out of New Mexico or New Mexico State. So good breakdown there. JP, any thoughts individually about the Lobos?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a team that's gritty. Like Jake saying, there's guys that have been
Gotta be.
around the block a couple times, maybe not at the FBS level, but at the high end FCS level. This is their one and only shot at a lot of these programs in the Mountain West. Might as well take the real shot at it. And I don't think they're going to be, a rollover team by any means here through conference.
All right, that is New Mexico. Let's keep it moving. Drop your thoughts in the comments if you have a New Mexico prediction, if you know their season schedule, what you think they're going to go, if they'll make a bowl game, where the program's at. Let us know in the comments. Drop a comment no matter what it's on. Give us your take on the conference. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go to Fresno State. JP is going to take us through the Bulldogs.
Yeah, let's talk Bulldogs here in 2025. Win total sits at 6.5. Little juice to the over at -132, depending on your book, obviously. I think they made one of the better hires of the offseason and go getting Matt Entz from North Dakota State or from USC, who was at North Dakota State prior. First season, it's a team who's going to change identity. Think Fresno State and what they've been over the last 20 years, high flying, good quarterbacks, good receivers, right? Like it's a high flying offensive player is really good. That ain't how Entz really works around here. It's going to become more of a powerhouse in the run game. They're going to be more of a hard-nosed football team and play good defense. It's an identity change. We know that's tough for a lot of programs, especially at this level where you spin over a roster as heavy as you do. Offensive coordinator Josh Davis comes over from South Dakota. Now, we did a MAC preview earlier. Nick Bendetto, that was at NIU a season ago. He's now hired on at Fresno State with Entz. That's a good hire on the defensive side. The offensive side very much goes into that scheme, what Entz wants to be, right? Roller coaster a couple of years for the Bulldogs. Let's just be completely honest about it for them and their fan base. I think it was a well-received hire. I think a hire's got a lot of hype around it, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch kind of what this does in the Valley. Let's start on the offensive side of things, right? A solid line of good quarterback play has been what Fresno State's hung their hat on for a couple of years, right? You had the time with Keene, and then you had Haener for a while too. That was a really gutsy, good kid and quarterback in Jake Haener through some really good Fresno State teams as well. Now you're going to have to go through a little bit of a position battle. Let's be completely honest about it. I don't think anybody between the two has really stepped out in front of the other. You bring in E.J. Warner from Rice, who was at Temple before that. And then you also bring in an FCS transfer in Carson Conklin, who was at Sac State a season ago. Very good at Sac State. Here's the difference between the two. Conklin's kind of had a better career if you're looking at just numbers. E.J. Warner feels like he's got more of the upside, has some turnover issues, was in a couple of offenses that let him be a little more of a gunslinger. That's not how Entz is going to run his thing. So it'll be really interesting to see if they both get snaps this fall or if we really ride the hot hand early and just stay with that guy throughout the year. I talked about the hard-nosed run game that Entz is going to want to have. Talk about one of the best running back rooms within the conference, right? You got to look at what, Entz's DNA was. Two guys combined for over 800 yards a season ago, and they both returned. You also bring in an Arizona transfer and Rayshawn Luke, and this group's good, man. I think this group's going to be one of the best within the Mountain West. Receiver core, right? You're going to rely on the portal as much as you possibly can to hit on a few. They really didn't feel like this is going to have to be what it had been in the past, but it's also a program that recruits at a high level within the Mountain West and can go get talent at these positions, right? You bring in four guys from various backgrounds. Josiah Freeman returns after, having some issues in 24 with some injuries. Tight end room is strong. Not really sure what we'll get out of them as they're kind of taking a different role on with the new head coach and offensive coordinator hire. Talking the O-line, right? It's possible that scope, like the scheme and coaching alone, is probably going to benefit this group. I think you can talk about that kind of position anywhere in the country. When the coaching gets better, the scheme helps them. The offensive line naturally gets better if they know how to kind of work things and make things happen. I talked about the running back room. Let's talk about two of those guys outside of the Arizona transfer and Rayshawn Luke that are going to get these carries. Elijah Gilliam, Bryson Donaldson, two guys that you're going to want to circle and pay attention to. Now, they're probably going to want more of a workhorse, but all three of these guys are going to get extended carries within the offense. Receiver room, Josiah Aon, he's a guy who's transferred in from Western Colorado, so a Division II level. Very talented, very good. That's a guy that you're going to want to pay attention to there in the receiving room. Defensively, got to play good defense in a Matt Entz system, and I think that's something Fresno State's going to have to adapt here in the next couple of years. It might take some time, but Nick Bendetto brings basically his staff over from NIU after having some really good years there. The hope is that this starts to transfer, kind of build better and better as the years go on. They're going to want a unit over the last couple of years, like what NIU had, but at a higher level, because they believe they can recruit at a higher level out there in the Valley than they had No linebackers return from last year. A couple of transfers, or they're going to work to fill the gap. They bring in Jaden Pearson, who's a really good tackler at Utah State a season ago, and then Kevon Thunderbird. He's going to really get his first chance after transferring in to be a starter within this league or starter anywhere. DB-wise, needs a reset. Like, it needs a real reset. Alzalian Hamilton's the one guy that kind of comes back, but they're going to have to really rely on some guys to step up throughout this roster. And Briggs is a guy that came in missed last year, in 24 due to injury. And then there's a couple other options that they have. They're going to battle for that other corner spot opposite of Hamilton. Players to know. I got to give my Drake shout out where I can. Defensive lineman Finn Claypool. This is Pioneer League. If you want to call him all-conference guy, All-American, basically FCS All-American level type guy. Comes in, very big, disruptor, gets to the passer well, a little more undersized, will play on the edge for them. And then safety, Cameron Braca. More productive in 23 than in 24, but listening to beat writers kind of talk about how they handle everything, he's going to be good. Like he just kind of got into a weird spot last year. Things didn't quite go his way. He's been really productive. He's one that's turned heads in spring. It's one to pay attention to for sure, right? The interior, I worry about the size on the defensive line. The exterior just has to be able to get after the quarterback. They didn't get after the quarterback or a ton last year. We're not very good against the run, if we're being completely honest. The last couple of years, they lack size in those spots, but there are guys in place that they believe can help that defense improve that way. Schedule-wise, man, 2 tough ones off the rip. I mean, you have to look at playing at Kansas. You play Georgia Southern. We know that we've already talked Georgia Southern in the Sun Belt preview. That's a team picked towards the top of that conference. Is Kansas going to be the Kansas of 23 or the Kansas of 24? Doesn't matter. You get them on the road. That's a tough power conference game. At Boise, at San Jose State, and those are probably the 2 Mountain West games that are the toughest for them. So I think you're a year or 2 off from Fresno State really popping, but I'm worried that they'll make noise this year, but not kind of get to that point that fans are expecting quite yet.
Yeah, it's a fan base that's super dedicated and also very like Nebraska Kool-Aid filled during the offseason, because I remember going into last year when I broke them down and I talked Mikey Keene and all the people in the comments excited about that ability from that quarterback, and then things started to go south, and then it really, really went south. Like, it's a fan base that expects really good things because that's what the program's done, and the grittiness of it, and back in the Jake Haener days and the Power 4, Power 5 at that time, upsets that they could commit. It's a good team, and it's a good team to break down in that way. I do think they're a couple of years out, if not maybe next year, but 2 feels much more comfortable in my case too. Jake, any thoughts on the Bulldogs?
Yeah, you mentioned last year for good reason. They had high expectations going into the season. Like Malik Sherrod, Jalen Moss, both went to Boise and then Arizona State, and then Mikey Keene, obviously at Michigan now. Like, they had legitimate talent, and just kind of some weird things happened, and that just kind of prevented them to, really thrive last year. But I love Entz, love the hire. He recruits Midwest ties. Like, thank you for your mention of Finn Claypool, Jordan, on the Drake transfer. I think it's going to work out.
Dogs and dogs.
They don't accept 6 wins, but 6 wins would feel like a win this year in year 1 for Entz. But we'll see what happens. I like it.
It's a complete overhaul of your true identity as a school. Like, I think you can be better in the long run by doing this kind of thing and attracting that talent, because they recruit at a really high level for Mountain West programs. Yeah. But it is a complete overhaul of how they handle things and what their identity is as a university.
I would say too, like, if Entz goes the Midwest route recruiting and it doesn't work out, I think it's going to piss off the fans, because they want you recruiting in the Valley. They want
we own the Valley. Players. We run this. We run Northern California. Hey, shout out Finn Claypool going Bulldogs. The Bulldogs just changing the color scheme.
He sure is. All right, that is Fresno State. Good preview and breakdown there. Let's move it down the line. We're going back to me. I want to talk a little UNLV, JP. I don't want to get you wrong on the overlay, but this team's very important here in 2025 because they have high aspirations, high expectations. They're the second in the conference odds-on favorite to make the college football playoff. They were closer than people realized last year. But let's first talk about, obviously, the main thing that is on everybody's mind. He's the cover of the episode, the Dan Mullen hire. They went 11-3 last year, 6-1 in the Mountain West. The program's still excited because of that hire. In its 28-year history before Barry Odom got there, they averaged 3 wins a season. Barry Odom's 2 years, win 9 games, beat Kansas in the Vegas Bowl. Then you win another bowl game. You win 11 games. Like, the program's on the up and up, even through the Sluka ordeal. Here comes Dan Mullen. They made an awesome hire, a guy with a ton of experience. He was on the desk for ESPN beforehand, didn't think he'd get him, got back into the coaching game, formerly at Mississippi State and Florida. Everybody knows that, but he was previously in the Mountain West. Back when he coached at Utah, Dan Mullen was in the Mountain West. And then that team was a part of that conference back then. He was, fun fact about Mullen, first coach in FBS history within his first 2 years at a school to win a BCS and a New Year's Six bowl game in his first 2 years at a school. So a guy can do it quick. Granted, he had a little bit more of a loaded deck than what UNLV is going to provide him with those SEC teams, but we'll see if he can do it quickly here too. On the offensive side, he brings in a new offensive coordinator, Corey Dennis, previously the offensive coordinator at Tulsa in 2024. He was before that with Ohio State as their quarterbacks guy in 2020 to 2023. If you think of Ohio State quarterbacks back in those timelines, they're pretty good at football. So a quarterbacks guy, now the offensive coordinator, expect some good things from both the offensive mind of Mullen and Dennis combined. On the defensive side, a little bit of a weird story here. They had their guy left in April for personal reasons. Who do they hire? Paul Gunther, a 21-year NFL coach. He comes in. He's going to make some changes to the unit. He's been in various positions. Most recently, the 2024 run game coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. He comes back into the college scheme with UNLV and Dan Mullen. Let's talk about the returning production. And we just went against it with the Stanford Steve thing, but this team only returns 32% of their combined production, ranking 132nd out of 136 teams in college football. I feel like when we preview the middle tier or lower tier, it can be like, well, is it good production? A lot of the UNLV season last year was good. So I do think they're going to obviously miss some huge pieces, which we'll get into, but a lower ranking in production, and they had to refill that. And I think they did a decent job with that within the transfer portal. They have a lot of multi-transfer guys out of Power 4 schools where they made multi-Power 4 stops and now are at UNLV. So they have some experience in different places. They do have the 122nd strength of schedule rating in the country. So I think that's why they're still picked towards the top, even though there's all these new faces and not a ton of returning production. The coaching hire also attributes to that, but they're still picked towards the top of this conference because the schedule, which we'll get into at the very end, is decently easy. Let's start on the offense. The offense has a lot of moving pieces with the program changes, especially at the quarterback position. You had two quality options last year. You have two quality options this year. Alex Orji, the Michigan transfer, everybody knows that name, and Anthony Colandrea. He comes over from Virginia. This quarterback battle is said to be ongoing. No, it's not. It's Colandrea. I watched because let me talk to you. I reached out to Matt Neverett, the radio voice for the UNLV Rebels, and he told me the pronunciation. And we talked at UNLV football. So nice try, JP, but I appreciate the lookout. Ongoing battle for week one. I do think they both give you the dual threat look. Orji, obviously more of a run-focused guy. We saw his issues through the air at Michigan, but we will see who takes the field week one. Neverett, who I talked to, the UNLV radio broadcast voice, he thinks that it's going to be kind of a both in action week one, where they're going to have either formations where they're both on the field, or it's going to be kind of interchangeable. And then he said that Mullen has talked about how they're going to have a set starter by week 2 against Sam Houston. So we'll see who steps on the field then, but still both viable options to replace Hajj Malik Williams and Matthew Sulka. All right. On the running back position, Jalen Glover, the Utah transfer, and Kevion Lee from Mississippi State. He got banged up in 2024. Lee, that is, season-ending injury. So he comes back off that. But Glover was in kind of a limited backup role of that Utah offense as well. On the outside, you're trying to replace one of the best in college football, Ricky White. Not only was he one of the best receivers in the country, and that's why he is where he is now, but he was also one of the best punt blockers. We don't preview special teams a lot in this, but it's definitely worth mentioning because Ricky White had more punt blocks than half of the country combined. Definitely worth noting. So they got to replace two facets there. They did so with a bunch of young Power 4 transfers, and I don't know if any of them will get to that level, but they have some stats behind them. I mean, they not a ton, but I don't know if they're going to be replace Ricky White within that offense, but maybe the identity change won't call for a lot of Ricky White style numbers. The offensive line, you brought in a nice UNC transfer, but you did lose a couple of starters. The unit is kind of a wait and see to me. It's a plug and play, but if you get them going, you can get that dual threat look going with both quarterbacks. You also offer a lot more to Orji if you can have a better offensive line. So the offense, a lot of plug and play, a lot of new faces, but I do expect the unit to be good overall, as Mullen has had some good teams offensively over his tenure as a head coach. All right, on the defense, This is a little bit more of an experienced group transfer-wise. It's not like the young transfers they brought in the outside and the offense. This is where the multi-stop Power 4 guys have come in, and notable transfers I want to start this off with is Chief Borders. He went to Nebraska, Florida, and made a small short stop at Pitt before ending up at UNLV. He'll be the guy on the edge, high upside. I liked him at Nebraska. He obviously just didn't play as much as he wanted to, ends up at UNLV. I think he'll make a huge impact for the Rebels. And then on the defensive back side of things, they brought in like 3 or 4 guys, a couple of them being on that younger side, but one with some good statistics on a really good football team. LaTerrence Welch, the Arizona State transfer. He had 2 picks last season for that Big 12 champion Arizona State team, along with a handful of solo tackles. So I think that's your kind of experience, I guess, compared to the other transfers that you brought in on this defensive unit. One guy that we have to mention, similar to Ricky White that they lost, Jackson Woodard at the linebacker position. One of the best linebackers in college football, one of the best players for me to watch, one of my favorite players to watch over his tenure there. You're similar to what I talked about with Utah State. What are we replacing? Not only are we replacing the team captain, Jackson Woodard, NFL guy who's in camp right now, we are replacing 70 solo tackles. We are replacing 4 interceptions and 17 tackles for loss at the linebacker position. His understudy's still there. He's going to have to step up, take a similar role, be the captain with all these new faces rolling around, because this was a top 25 rushing defense in 2024. They're going to need to repeat that if they're going to make that jump and get over the Boise State hump, who's expected to be good again. Going back quickly, Gunther has coached a lot of the defensive areas in his time as a defensive coach in the NFL. It's not just like he's a D-line guy. He's coached defensive backs, linebackers. So I do think it'll be a well-balanced group. They'll switch over to the 4-3-4 as expected for most NFL coaches headed to the college level. But we'll wait and see. I mean, with the faces that they lost, both on the offense and defense side of the ball, really the star players on both of those units, UNLV expected to be good because of the schedule, because of the coach. I trust him to be, but I can't tell you exactly what their identity is going to be because it's kind of changed with Mullen over his time. He likes to run the spread, but with the running quarterback abilities he brought in, are they going to be more of like spread them out and shoot, something like that? So we'll really see when it comes onto the field. On the schedule, they go on the road to Sam Houston in week 2, where we'll finally figure out who's going to be QB1 for this team. That team's not great, right? But it's a team that won 10 games last year. So it's hard to say like, oh, don't steam walk over that. And then if you do that, you pretty much set up a 3-0 game with UCLA in Allegiant Stadium. So let's hope for a 3-0 start for UNLV, because that would be an awesome one to preview. And just as a college football fan, for Nico Maliava to roll into Allegiant Stadium against Dan Mullen and this team. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on UNLV. Obviously a very highly touted team when it comes to the Mountain West this year. Jake, anything I missed?
Highly touted is right. You got like 4 or 5, former 4-star, 5-star guys on this roster. It's fascinating for sure, but nothing's going to happen unless you figure out the quarterback situation. I think it's Colandrea, but maybe you use Alex Orji in a run quarterback situation. Dan Mullen's pretty good at that. Here's something to think about. And if there are any UNLV football fans, I guess they can come at me in my mentions, but if Dan Mullen brings this team to another 10-win season like Barry Odom did, it's going to be probably a lot of SEC jobs open next year. One just makes you think. I know he kind of doesn't want to do the whole recruiting thing, and I think he might be over the whole SEC thing, but at the same time, I think he might want another shot at Florida, at Mississippi State, with whatever job may open up.
JP, your thoughts on the Rebs?
Yeah, still trying to get a grip on them, to be honest with you. I can't quite figure out how I handle UNLV this year. I know that they do have a shot to win this conference. I also have a feeling that like 7-5 is a real thing, just because you're not sure how all this meshes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to put them. UNLV fans, if you disagree in the comments, disagree with the pronunciation that your radio broadcaster gave me, let us know. Drop it in the comments. We appreciate you being here. Let's move it down the line. Let's keep it going. We're already 55 minutes into this show, so it's going to be a long one. Let's head over to Boise State, the team everybody wants to talk about, the odds-on favorite to win the conference, the odds-on favorite to make the college football playoff out of the conference. Jake, you're taking us through them.
Yeah, no pressure. Just basically covering the number 1 team in the group of 5. So I guess I got this. Unfortunately, we'll not be probably going that short on this group because we just need to talk about them, and they're probably the most important team that we will be talking about in our group of 5 conference breakdowns. Where does it all start this year, though? I know the name is pretty popular, so it's not taking anybody by surprise. But what can Maddox Madsen do to elevate his game for the Broncos this year? I mean, he's looked at as a guy who might be like, I don't know if there's another guy in college football that's success of their own team could come down to one specific player more than Maddox Madsen. You lose Ashton Genty. How do you replace him? Well, here's the short answer. You don't, and you can't, but you do bring in a really, really good running back room that maybe as a whole can produce almost as many yards as Genty produced last year. I know that's a tough time to beat, but you got John Brez Dubar, you have freshman star Syer Gaines, who's getting kind of that, dare I say it, he's getting that Genty hype. I think a lot of people are super excited about Gaines. Oh, and then on top of that, why don't we just go in the portal? I mentioned this earlier. Let's pick up Malik Sherrod, who 2 years ago was, dare I say, like almost on par with Ashton Genty. Like Ashton Genty wasn't Ashton Genty 2 years ago, like with the hype and everything. Like people thought Malik Sherrod was one of those dudes in the Mountain West when he was at Fresno. And now he's probably your third go-to guy as you're in your running back room. So the running back room is loaded. I think this offense and this team has a ton of confidence. And I know Coach Danielson does as well, but it's going to come down to the quarterback, because I think the passing offense, it needs to take a step up this year. If anybody remembers Boise State this year, they had a really good 2024 season, but they go back to the 3 picks against Penn State. They go back to the 17 for 45 against Oregon. If you want to be that group of 5 team who is the Cinderella that just wins that one playoff game to earn the respect throughout the entire country, it's got to come down to Madsen. Like I've only mentioned his name 10 times already, so no pressure there, man. There's a lot of uncertainty in the wide receiver room. You lose your top 3 receivers from 2024. You bring some different guys in. I think Latrell Caples is going to be good for them, but they did lose a couple of other guys. It's like, we'll kind of wait and see. But tight end Matt Latour is probably the best tight end in this league, maybe outside of the guy from Wyoming. He's going to have an all-conference season. He might be Madsen's go-to guy. I think Madsen thrives with like running backs catching out of the backfield and good tight ends just because of what we get at receiver. The defense, not Ashton Genty type, but Ahmad Hassanin was no slouch when you lost him. He first team all-conference guy, like absolute stud. I think he got picked in the 3rd or 4th round of the NFL draft. So you look at a guy like Jaden Virgin Morgan at defensive end, also another all-conference guy from last year. He comes back, and he could replace Hassanin and be that good. Marco Notarini is a linebacker that's going to be good for them. And then the secondary, we look at the secondary, this might be the best position group on the whole roster. You bring in a guy like Jaden Mickey from Notre Dame, and I'm not even sure if he's going to crack your 2 deep. Like that's how good this group is with Ty Benefield, with Zion Washington in the back end, and then a couple of other guys starting at corner that you get back as well. Couple of guys they picked up in the portal that are going to be good pieces, but this group retained a lot of its roster. Obviously, you have the big names that went to the draft and graduated, but this team was able to hold on to a lot of its roster, and the entire offensive line room comes back too. That's invaluable. That's unheard of in the group of 5, but Boise must either have the program set or just a little bit of cash in the G5 to keep these guys around. Lastly, you lose your 2 most important players last year. I already mentioned them enough, but you bring back so many guys, and this roster is still really, really good. There's a reason, guys, they're over under win total at 9.5. Is set it at minus 215. Like there's a ton of confidence that Vegas has in this group. I think it comes down to Maddox Madsen, and he got the experience from the playoff game last year, from that conference title run. We've seen it before. It's not unheard of. He might just be a really good college quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback, but he can still take his game to another level at the collegiate level in the Mountain West. And we'll see. Look at their schedule. It's really fascinating. You have at USF that first week, my favorite game of the week, on a Thursday at 4:30 Midwest time. And then at Notre Dame.
Yep.
And you don't get Notre Dame like you had Oregon second game of the year. You get Notre Dame, was it 4 or 5 weeks down the road, and you already be plenty tested by then? That is a sneak peek to like a first round playoff game, and I'm so excited for that one.
Just a couple of weeks past of where Notre Dame lost to NIU last year, by the way. Mark that down. So we'll see what this Boise State team can do. Obviously, a lot of expected talent. Matt Madsen has a lot of pressure, as Jake mentioned, but they're plus 198 to make the college football playoff out of this conference for good reason. I mean, 9.5 as a G5 win total when you were already the representative last year and people know your brand. Yeah, you got a lot of high expectations to go back-to-back in this conference yet again. All right, JP, thoughts quickly on Boise State?
Yeah, I'd be honest, like, it's a team that isn't going to change its identity. They've had good running backs at the beginning of time. I don't think they're worried about finding another one. But I do get really happy when I'm thinking, like, how good the receiver and tight end room are for Madsen. And there's a transition. He's not just getting thrown into, like, being an absolute star. So,
all right, that is Boise State. Let's keep it moving. Let's go to one of our armed forces. Let's talk a little Air Force football, a team that was really, really good a couple of years ago, took a massive step back last year. JP, preview them for us in 2025.
Yeah, the team that probably gets forgotten the most in the Commander-in-Chief trophy, but I tell you what, it's a team within the Mountain West that's been towards the top of it for a long, long time. Troy Calhoun will go into his 19th year there in Colorado Springs. They were 5-7 last year. Their season win total currently sits right now at 5.5, juiced to the over at 164. Expectations at service academies are usually good enough to get to a bowl game. Mixture of athletes, program tradition, and just being tough to defend, if we're being completely honest about it, right? The attrition hit them hard, really hard last year in 24. I previewed them last year, got that privilege, and we talked about it, how big of a turnover throughout that roster was, not from the portal, just from straight graduation throughout the academy. They've won 9 games more times in the last 8 years than they've had a losing season, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about what this program is and who they are, right? When service academies are good, I think people circle a couple things. The fullbacks are usually really good, or they have a really good quarterback at the helm. I think the fullback situation is great for the Falcons. We'll get into that here in a second. But the quarterback situation is more of a question mark. There'll be a couple guys that probably get some snaps. Josh Johnson seems to be the leader in the clubhouse for getting the snaps for Falcons week 1 against Bucknell. Let's go into the fullbacks. Like I told you, when the service academies are good, one of these two positions is either popping off or they're both working really well in sync, right? Dylan Carson will be the guy this year. Very talented, right? He's going to be the leading rusher. He was a leading rusher a season ago. Owen Allen is similar build, but a little bit of a different running type on those two guys. They're going to be really good at that position. I think one of the deepest units on this football team and throughout everything. Tailback and wingback will be by committee. That's usually how these programs run. You stay in your pitch lanes, make plays downfield, and that it's going to come down to quarterback decision making decision making is kind of why I talk about it. We come from small town Iowa or small town I guess you didn't come from small town Parks, but we know how it works. The option is massive in the Midwest. And so like this is a high level option. You've seen like good high school teams run the option. You think that looks silky and like magic. Watch these service academies do it. That's why the quarterback position is such a big deal, right? Pay attention to that. It's one of the most fun things to watch on a Saturday every single week. On the offensive line, they're pretty hype about this. I think there's some good things to think about. 3 offensive line starters return in this offense, right? It's got to be gelled. There's so much communication that goes into this on the offensive line. You have no idea. Guys have to be able to gel, trust each other, and understand what each other is saying and seeing. And it's an absolute must throughout this, right? There's true high hope for this group that it could be one of the better units. And maybe if it's not the best unit, right behind the defensive front, where that's going to be really good as well, right? This team ran for 1,000 less yards last year than they did in 23 when they were winning a ton of football games. I underlined that and circled it 5 times as like 1,000 less yards. That should tell you everything you need to know about how tough it got for them last year. A couple players to know here. Caden Frew, tailback, there's a 5.8 yards a carry guy last year, just over 260. And then the center, Costin Cooley, going to be a guy who probably has a chance to be all Mountain West, if I'm being completely honest with you, on the offensive line. Defensively, right? The Mountain West, pass defense wasn't bad, wasn't great last year, but it did, numbers-wise, do better than most teams throughout the league. The defense did have, some trip-ups against the run in certain spots, and now it gets to a spot where the defensive line returns a couple of guys. That's going to be huge, right? I just talked about how it might be the best unit within this team. The defensive line has that real attitude and that ability. If you just look through who the roster is and who they bring back and the actual talent they have on these guys, it's insane. I'll just bring up a couple guys right now. Defensive end Daniel Grobe, and then defensive tackle Peyton Zadorek. Two guys who are going to be all Mountain West contenders. There's not even a real, contention there, if I'm being completely honest with you. Three guys a return that had more than 4 starts a season ago on that unit. I talked about the linebacker core here. It's going to be headlined by Blake Fletcher. There's a number of guys here that have seen starts, minimal starts, but they're going to have to really work to make this unit better and really shore up the front 7 in this situation. And on the back end, you lose 2 really good corners, and it's always been tough for them to get in this spot. Like, you got to have an absolute athlete in the Mountain West to play corner, and you got to play DB. This unit is going to have to really rely on a lot of those guys getting better and better as time goes on. Onto the schedule, I think if you look at where the schedule is on this thing, it's a tougher Mountain West schedule than we've seen in the last couple of years for Air Force. Boise, at UNLV, at San Jose State, at Colorado State. It's not a cakewalk. It's not a cakewalk. I don't care if you're the top end of the Mountain West or the bottom end of the Mountain West. Non-con, Commander-in-Chief trophy, obviously, is you get Army Navy. Bucknell would love that. And then you get UConn. I thought that one is like, what a crazy game.
Isn't it the
year?
Right?
It's at UConn.
In November, right?
In November. Yep. Second week of November. I thought that was a crazy addition. It's like one of those college football games. You're going to be like, damn, I forgot Air Force plays UConn this week. So defensively, I think they're going to be solid. I do worry about the back end a little bit. I do think the trenches on both sides would be really good. If they can find a way to get the quarterback in a good spot and he's not turning it over, they don't have any issues on that front. They can work with the offensive line and really just move the football and use the option game to their, back to their norm. We're not 1,000 yards less than we were a couple years ago. Then I think things are going to be okay and they'll get back to bowling.
When you think about the Armed Forces team, any commander-in-chief capable winning team, you want them to be big and powerful. So it's good to hear that they're going to be good up front, just for America. So I think it's such a fun thing when Air Force is good. I mean, a couple of years ago when they were ripping off, I think at one point they were 8-0, and then they lost a couple games towards the end when they got competitive teams in there. It's just good for college football to have a good Armed Forces team on one way or another. Jake, thoughts quickly on the Falcons?
Yeah, you got to trust a guy like Troy Calhoun, who's been around for 19 seasons. And really, the last decade, Air Force has been the most stable service academy team. So it was kind of odd to see them struggle last year.
Yeah.
And especially since, I know the portal hits those service academies tough, but, you see Army and Navy succeeding and having good seasons last year. It's got to bite at Air Force a little bit to get back to where they were and dominate the Commander-in-Chief trophy. And on top of that, you get your best pieces back, your most important pieces. You get your linemen and you get your fullbacks back. So you got to feel like you have a ton of confidence.
All right, we'll see what Air Force can do in 2025. Let's keep it moving. Let's go back to me. Let's talk a little San Jose State Spartan football headed into this season. Picked third to finish in the conference by a majority of media outlets, platforms, whatever you want to call them. And so we got to spend some time talking about this team. Second year under Ken Niumatalolo. It's a good way to segue in Air Force into a former Armed Forces coach in Navy. I mean, he ran the option very effectively for a long stint at Navy. And we kind of wondered last year. They didn't have any offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator changes, by the way. But we kind of wondered last year with his first year there, were we going to get an option-style San Jose State team? Could we have been more wrong even having that conversation? I mean, this team threw the ball 43 times a game last year, which was the number 1 rank in college football. Nobody threw it more than San Jose State. Now, there is the downside of that. They resulted in 127th ranked rushing offense, but when you're throwing the ball that often, almost 85% of their play calls that's going to take a hit. Let's start on the offense. Looking into this season, you retain your quarterback. Walter Agate comes back. Agate, any pronunciation police down there that I could be wrong on that one. If I will go with Agate, Walter Agate returns. He started the final 7 games. Okay, thank you, Jake. Agate started the final 7 games for this squad last year and had a nice season. I mean, very mobile and aware in the pocket, very agile, extended plays well with his legs. And I think he's going to have a nice development and a good step forward this year, pending the wide receiver fill-ins that we'll get into. The running back room returns a lot. However, the passing focus from last year kind of makes it feel like a moot point when talking or breaking down this team. Like if they stay with a similar play calling style, then who knows? Who knows if these running backs are going to matter? I think they'll get somewhat more into the run. It's hard to see them throwing it again 50 times a game. But if they do, they have viable returning options. They're in a deep room that they feel comfortable with. Two guys to mention within that room, Floyd Chalk IV and Jabari Bates. They'll see the majority of the carries if that room does take a bigger stance within this offense. Now we get to the elephant in the room. At wide receiver, you lose Nick Nash, the unanimous first-team All-American in college football, the first you've ever had for your school if you're a San Jose State fan. He's gone. Who's going to replace him? How are we going to replace that kind of production who has 17 receiving touchdowns? I think his foreshadowing in Matthew Coleman, his understudy, if you will, junior Matthew Coleman, I think he'll step up into the slot, still be a massive part of that offense. Usually when guys find success within a scheme like Eget did with Nash last year, they're still kind of just out of mental remembering looking at that direction. And Matthew Coleman's a viable, good option with a lot of upside potential at that position. So I do still think he's going to be a main target within this offense. He did play in the Hawaii Bowl game, Coleman that is, posted 119 receiving yards. So it got fans feeling pretty good about replacing Nick Nash and what he brought to this team. I think a really bright spot of this team last year was this offensive line. Nobody really talked about it, but when you drop back 43 times a game, there's a lot of opportunities to get sacked. They only got sacked on 1.7% of their dropbacks last season, and they returned a couple of good pieces in this unit. I mean, it's a huge retention piece, and I think the game experience from the guys they have coming in, plus the depth that they had last year after retaining the 2 to 3 offensive linemen that had some starting experience, that this unit's going to be good overall again. On the defensive side of the ball, this unit struggled last year in some games, and that cost them a better conference record, to be honest with you. The front has some new pieces. They returned Gafa Faga, who was Mountain West honorable mention. He was a really good nose guard, and he's going to be the leader of this front. It's going to be very important for them to take a step forward on this defensive front because they had some struggles against the rush, but this is a very good guy to center that group around. The linebacker unit, it feels like a lot of G5 teams that I'm previewing have good linebacker units. This is a really good one, too. First team All-Mountain West 2024. Jordan Pollard is back alongside. I'm going to try it, people. Come for me in the comments. Tanelia Lato, who posted 70 tackles last year. I mean, these are really two good guys that are going to be the leaders on this defensive unit. So if the unit takes a step forward, you got to think these guys are going to be at the head of it again. I mean, 70 tackles is nothing to blink at. That's a good chunk there. The defensive backs last year weren't given enough credit. And not because they didn't give up points, because this defense definitely did, but San Jose State was one of the best teams in the country at taking the football away. They averaged 2 a game. So if they can get some of that production back and limit some of the touchdowns they gave up, which they gave up their fair share, you think this is going to be a pretty good unit. And if they can get the guys stepping up on offense and everything meshes well, now it's kind of all adding together. If you're wondering why they were still picked in the top 3 or 4 of this conference this season while losing the unanimous All-American, it's all kind of coming together now in your mind, hopefully. The only returner in the secondary, however, is Isaiah Rivas. He'll need to get up the other guys up to speed. They brought in some transfers, so we'll see where they kind of go with that. San Jose State, overall, I think the defensive side of the ball has some lingering questions, but if the vets help the new faces, the group and the team can improve overall. I think the schedule, if you're a fan, feels decently good. You beat Stanford last year. However, you got to go play them on the road this year. And if it feels like you can stay healthy through your road trip to Texas, who's probably going to be the number 1 or number 2 team in the country at that time, I think there's 7 or 8 wins on the schedule. And again, you may say 7 or 8 wins, they're picked 3rd in the conference. That will get you a 3rd place conference. But I really do think we talked about it in another G5 conference where it feels like San Jose State's here, and then there's multi-steps, and that's where UNLV and Boise State are, right? Like I think there's a little bit of a significant fall off when it comes to them competing on that Boise State level, even through UNLV. So that's where I see San Jose State. Where do you guys see the Spartans? Anything I missed, Jake?
Yeah, I love this team. I think it's got an awesome system. I love the spread and shred. I think it's got legitimate the spread and shred. I think it's got legitimate talent, but you mentioned like competing in the top of the Mountain West. I don't know if there's another team with a more favorable schedule in college football this year.
Shit.
No Boise, no Colorado State, no UNLV. So, I mean, obviously, if you're on the table, you'll see one of them probably in a conference title. But
this is Colorado State's schedule last year with a more talented football team.
Yes, and I think you're pretty much set at every position on this team outside of cornerback. Like I love this team. We'll probably get to them later.
All right, let's talk San Jose State on the JP side.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was exactly going to say. This is more talented Colorado State team with the same schedule, and it really, I don't think the gap between them and UNLV is as big as, maybe people think, but the gap between them and Boise is different. I would 100%.
Yeah.
I wish they matched up.
It's just a program that went into a different direction. It's all it was. Like the UNLV money got spent. This is a program who went through a lot of transition at the university and just an athletic program.
All right, that's San Jose State. Let's keep it moving. Let's go back to the top. Jake, you're going to take us through the Rainbow Warriors of Hawaii. Shout out Hawaii. Jake, tell us about this team headed into next season.
Yeah, we'll keep this a little up-tempo, just like the Timmy Chang offense. Timmy Chang enters year 4, looks to get the Rainbow Warriors back to a bowl game for the first time since 2020. The Brandon Schrager era is over. In comes in Michael Elahado. So I want to say, I think Micah Elahado. I don't want to get that wrong because I kind of shouted him out in our G5 quarterback segment. Freshman from O'Gorman in Las Vegas. This guy is used to high-level football. He's actually a Hawaii kid. He just transferred over and played his high school football at O'Gorman. He stepped in the last one. Yeah, O'Gorman. Shout out my Sioux Falls schools. We played the last 1.5 games at quarterback, and I think there is a lot to be excited about if you're a Rainbow Warrior fan. And I think this passing attack could be, outside of San Jose State, who we just mentioned, the best in the Mountain West. You get a guy like Nick Senecal back. You get Pofele Ashlock back, 2 of the best receivers in this conference. These 2 could both have a 1,000-yard season, and I think Alejado could throw for easily 3,000 yards. They got to get a little bit more going on the run game. It's kind of like who were we just talking about at the beginning? It was kind of like Colorado State. You want a bit more of balance. I know you want to throw the ball and have a kind of an air raid style, but you need to have a little more consistency running the football. The offensive line, though, is in question. Ton of guys enter the spring portal, and they're just hurting right now at spots, and they just really don't know what they have. So you kind of expect you can throw more on a bad offensive line more than you can run. So it might just be throwing the ball 50, 55 times a game for this group. Defensively, though, you have Hall of Fame coach Dennis Thurman back as your defensive coordinator. They love this dude, man. And get this, they got 2 guys, one 8th-year senior in Elijah Robinson at defensive end, and another 7th-year senior in Logan Taylor at linebacker. Both were waiting to hear if they've been cleared. I don't know. Razul Faison still hasn't been cleared, and he doesn't know if he's going to be playing running back for South Carolina this year. So Hawaii fans, let us know. I think they got the clear to go from that kind of that JUCO rule. If they get these guys back, the defense should have a ton of confidence. It was a good defensive group last year, and the secondary brings back 4 starters. Ton of experience in the secondary. I think this group with your defensive coordinator and Thurman, some older 25-year-olds on that side of the ball, I think you should feel pretty good with where you're at. The non-conference schedule, it's pretty favorable. I mean, you get Stanford week 0 to cross the pond to go and play you. You've had Arizona. As a Big 12 fan, I'd hate to see them drop one to Hawaii, but Arizona, we don't really know what we're going to get out of Brent Brennan's group. You get Sam Houston to come to you with that new look, and Phil Longo's group, Portland State. So you realistically could go 3-1 before you start Mountain West play, and you miss Boise State. And anytime you miss Boise State on your schedule, it's a massive win. I think got to get to 6 wins. I'd love to see Hawaii score a ton of points with a solid defense. This team could sneak up on some people if Alejado pans out.
I love this school. I've been to this school, gentlemen. I've toured this school. I've walked the stadium. And when I tell you, even as a traveler and going for enjoyment, that you have to be a road gritty ass literal warrior. They couldn't have come up with a better nickname, because this is a road warrior. I always think when you see at Hawaii on someone's schedule, you may be like, oh, especially in their past years, their most recent, you'd be like, oh man, that's an easy win. But really the travel takes a toll, and the teams they got coming in put them in a really good spot schedule wise. So I love you. You kind of called them a sleeper without calling them a sleeper.
Yeah.
I feel that they could be that way. I like the Rainbow Warriors in 25. JP, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say you got to get your wins at home if you're going to go bowling for this team. When you go on the road, you play good football teams. This isn't like go on the road and play New Mexico. Like you go to the mainland and you have to play Arizona. You have to play Air Force, Colorado State, San Jose State, UNLV, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got to get the wins at home.
They got to go way in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got to go way in.
I mean, they could honestly, like, they could go undefeated at home.
Yeah, and they could clip Stanford and nobody would be that shocked. I got to be honest. I don't think I'd be that shocked.
Stanford's in a bad spot. I mean, we just talked about it. They got beat last year by San Jose State. So that's just where that program's at. All right, that's a good preview on Hawaii. Let's keep it moving. A couple more teams to go. Let's talk a little Pac football. Take us on over to Nevada and take us through this team in 2025, JP.
Wolfpack, 2 words, not 1 word. Wolfpack here, Nevada, win total of 3.5. It's split pretty even on that. And if you're looking at the juice and the odds on everything, Jeff Choate will go into his second year. They were 3-10 a season ago. No, they didn't make a bowl game. It's just a ruling they have on your traveling to Hawaii. They ended up adding an extra game last year. Proud program, a lot of winning throughout the years in the Mountain West, in the WAC even. And it's a team that has made 2 coaching changes in 3 years. It's tough. This year's, kind of looking back to get to bowl eligibility. It was a weird year for them last year, as I kind of mentioned. Let's start on the offense. Don't expect the game plan and the play calling really to change, from what was happening last year with their last OC. And now they have David Gilbert sit in there. There'll be a focus on a good run game, and they'll use the quarterback as well to work in that. Now let's go to the quarterback room. Chuba Purdy is kind of going to be a spot where, or Chuba Purdy, sorry, I said Chuba like Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Purdy.
Good catch.
A little bit of a traveler, Florida State, Nebraska. Now he's at Nevada. Couldn't stay healthy as much last year. From what I'm hearing and understanding, I've seen him play at Nebraska. I didn't see him play a ton at Florida State, obviously. A little more of a freak athlete than you may think, than meets the eye. Had some beat writers really talking about how he fits into this Gilbertson system with running the quarterback. That's a guy that I think that is going to do that. AJ Bianco is another guy that's probably going to get some playing time, a little less athletic in the run game, maybe a little bit more of a talented passer in that eye. And so something to pay attention to on how they work those 2 quarterbacks into the system, right? 2 main guys are going to be the featured backs. I think you look at Herschel Turner and Caleb Ramsier. From what I'm understanding, the Herschel Turner thing, like this is a guy came from Utah State. He's going to be really good. He was good at Utah State. They're really high on that guy. So pay attention there. Ashton Haynes could also be in that loop. They got kind of 3 guys that they're going to work with the hot hand on an offense that's predicated on running the football well, right? If the pass game is going to improve, like there's a couple things that really need to happen. Somebody's going to have to step up in the receiver room. They're going to have to get better, whether that's Purdy or that's Bianco, throwing through the air and being accurate through everything, right? It's going to be a battle kind of through who's going to be wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 behind Marcus Bellin, who seems like he's going to be the guy who's going to be a little bit more wide receiver 1 for them. Not your prototypical wide receiver 1 size, but talent is there and pass catching ability is there. 5 offensive line transfers come in. You guys know I like to talk about, like, if a guy transfers in, doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to hit. Well, they bring in guys who are established FCS guys who have been really good in the past, and so they should be plug-and-play guys for them there. And there's a couple other ones that they bring in that, they're just going to have to mix and match. But I can guarantee you that 2 of those FCS guys will be there in the starting rotation day 1. A couple of those players to know and understand, though, go to the offensive guard, Josh Grabinski. He's one that comes back from the Wolfpack a season ago, getting a lot of love. They had if you remember where, Isaiah World came from, this would be that location. This is a guy who played alongside him a season ago, has a chance to be an all Mountain West caliber guy. Jace Henry, a tight end, missed 24, or not all of 24, but a decent amount of 24 time just due to injuries and stuff. That's a tight end who's going to have to be able to block and work, but he's probably their best pass catching tight end option out of the bet or for the Wolfpack here in 24. Defensive, like 1 starter basically returns. There's a couple of guys that got snaps. Obviously, the starts in football is kind of a weird stat sometimes, but 1 guy who really truly comes back, had most of the starters, a large exodus on this unit, looking to improve, just out of being average. This is an average Mountain West defense, looking to get a little bit better on that, and definitely better against the pass and the run a season ago. Got to get better against the pass. We talked about some of these teams throughout the conference who can really sling it around the yard with good receivers. Depth may be an issue along the front. There's a worry on getting people to the quarterback and getting pressure on him and not leaving the back end a little more exposed than they were maybe last year. 5 transfers come in on the defensive line. Some guys returning from injury that missed time in 24, whether that's extended or a couple games. There's a couple things you got to pay attention there, and they really need to get that answered because that defensive front wasn't great a season ago. Linebacking core, is going to be Stone Combs. That's a guy 58 tackles a season ago. He's going to be the featured guy. and has gotten high potential tag. Jeff Choate had a couple of meetings and interviews talking about this guy and what he really thinks of him. This is one guy he circled and made an emphasis to mention. 7 transfers on the defensive secondary, 7. So they bring in guys who are filling a ton of DB gaps. I mean, that's corner, that's safety, that's places that really need to get better. They go to the portal to do so. There's guys that are coming in. A couple are proven commodities at other schools, maybe not at this level, but they're really high. Like we talked about on the offensive line, they're going to plug and play and work that way. It's a program who, has sat in the middle of the Mountain West a lot, but used to get into bowl games. I think they found a way, if they can just work their way into these high-end FCS guys, or maybe guys at a Division II level, or maybe even smaller G5 schools, work their way that way and get proven commodities rather than trying to plug and bring all these, Power 4 transfers in who only had a year or two at that other school. I think that's what Choate's kind of going for here. A couple guys to know on the defense. Mervyn Kenyon, the third, just safety, is a Sac State transfer, probably going to be a starter, was really good at the FCS level. Hayden McDonald, a safety, Columbia transfer. He was an FCS All-American a season ago. Kind of see where I'm going with that theme on what Choate wants to do. Schedule breakdown. This was one of the more interesting schedules I looked at in the Mountain West. I don't know if you guys looked at this one too much. Basically, 4-game seasons. We go 4 games, bye. 4 games, bye. The last 4 games. So, the Wolfpack 2 words. I think that I can't remember where that joke's from. They kept saying it. It might have been the Cover 3 guys. Always call them the Wolfpack 2 words. Instead of Wolfpack 1 word like North Carolina State. But I mean, it seems like a favorable schedule for a Mountain West school. They're looking to get back on track. I think Jeff Choate's a good hire. I think there's a lot of guys that think that it's just going to take time. It sounds like he's finding his footing, what he wants to be as a program, how he wants to attack the portal, how he attempt to keep kids on campus. I do think quarterback's a worry. I think the defensive line's a little bit of a worry. In a win total, what did I say that was at 3.5? It does make it tough to get back to a bowl game. I think they're a couple years off it, but I think they're going in the right direction. They may stun some guys and play really hard. They played in a lot of close games a season ago. Maybe they grab a couple of those 1 possessions this year and end up bowling. We'll see.
I remember us talking about Choate last year and him coming in and all the transfers that he brought in to kind of really try and establish a culture. I think what you mentioned in keeping guys around is super important. So I think any bit of success they can get to this year, like if they can get to that 4 or 5 win and just retain and not have to bring in 7 guys on the defensive secondary, will be huge for them going forward, because it is hard at these G5 programs, especially like Nevada. So good breakdown there. Shout out Nevada. They big no rival school, and we're a big no rival.
They do. They
show.
got a ton of no rival stuff, and it's really sharp. That blue and gray and white looks good.
Absolutely. All right, Jake, thoughts quickly on the Wolfpack.
JP's famous words: somebody's got to lose games, and I think it has to be this team. They fight hard. They're gritty. They played tough in a lot of games last year against good teams.
Not a lot of confidence in Brock Purdy's little brother Chubba.
I've seen him throw the ball a time or two. I wish him nothing
Brock
but the best.
Purdy never made bad throwing decisions in his time at State. Jake,
should at least
come on. Chubba slander.
Those are bad decisions with arm talent versus bad decisions with lack of talent.
Hey, Chubba can run though. Chubba's athletic.
That's why we
know. JP gave us the red. JP, let us know.
All right, let's go on to the last team before we give our conference championship picks. Let's talk a little San Diego State football, and this is another one that I got to give them their farewell of the Mountain West preview, because they will not be a part of it next year. They're headed to the Pac-12 as well. 3-9 in 2024, 2-5 in the Mountain West. Still head coach Sean Lewis. Everybody knows the name because he was the offensive coordinator back at Colorado in 23 before his stint here. Offensive coordinator brings in Matt Johnson. He was formerly just the quarterback's coach at San Diego State. He gets the call up and gets to split the play calling sheet with Lewis this year, and we'll get into why later. Defensive coordinator Rob Orich is formerly just the defensive line edge style coach for this team, promoted within as the departure of Eric Schmidt. There was a lot of excitement last year going in, especially from this show with Sean Lewis and what he did at Kent State and the offense that he showed at Colorado in his time there. But to say it was a bumpy ride is putting it very lightly. But he's doing the right things, I will say. I do think he's got this program going in a good direction as we'll go through. I think a fun note about him is the spring game is not big in the G5, but for their spring games at San Diego State, they go to local high schools, like multiple, and do open practices. I think it's a great way to create relationships, and it's kind of why he was successful at Kent State. You got to do these little different things to your local kids to keep them around at your G5 programs, and you'll find success. So I do think he's on the right track here at San Diego State. But last year, from what we saw at Lewis at Colorado, we really expected, a high-flying offense, a team that could put up points, and San Diego State's a historic G5 program of being pretty damn good at football. This offense was not very good last year, man. The offense averaged just 19 points per game, put them 119th in the nation. They were terrible on third down, just converting 35%, terrible in the red zone, just under 80%. And that all leads to Matt Johnson getting a piece of the play calling sheet this year. So he brings in a guy that coaching the quarterback has a couple now looks at the play calling sheet. We'll see if that can be the difference maker. The quarterback battle is here. A couple of transfers brought in. Jaden Denagle from Michigan, 4-star guy, a lot of talent, high ceiling, was really taken back by him not getting an opportunity, especially last year for Michigan, but played in J.J. McCarthy's shadow the year before, and the year before that he redshirted at Michigan. So this is just his second stop. Burt Emanuel Jr. is the other transfer. He's from Central Michigan, so a couple of Michigan guys. This is definitely the definition of a dual threat guy, if not a run-first guy. I mean, he can run the football. Could be a multiple look early in the season, or maybe even throughout the season with where they're at as a program with Emmanuel's running ability. He does offer a lot there. I think he had 18 scores on the ground last year. The offensive line looks pretty good. They returned a couple of quality pieces and added some nice pieces as well from the portal. Callan Ellis from Syracuse, and then Cam May from Howard. Big dudes. You got to replace them, because if you want to get them things going, especially with a running quarterback that you're bringing in, you got to have a good offensive line. The backs and receivers. It should be a split running back room with a nice piece of addition from Coastal Carolina and Christian Washington. He had a little bit of limited experience last year, but still a quality back nonetheless. And on the outside, they returned Jordan Napier, who was in the slot for them. And they add one ad I want to go through. They added multiple UCLA transfer, but the one I want to highlight is Jacob Bostic from Texas A&M. I think he's going to take a really highlighted role in this offense last year, because they need to get the ball downfield. Like, Napier was a good receiver for them last year, but I think he only totaled 450 yards. They just couldn't get anything going on the offensive side of the ball. So any returner, I think they just need to get going a little bit, get the ball downfield, do what you kind of did at Colorado, Sean Lewis, and you should see more success. Maybe the second look on the play calling sheet will help. On the defensive side of the ball, this unit had a rocky road as well last year, but they do return 10 out of 11 starters. We could go through the list of starters, but it would take the rest of the show. You return 10 out of 11 starters. We just talked about the culture that you can establish by doing that at a G5 school. You really think that this unit, no matter what, is going to take a step forward. You promote within. That kind of keeps those guys around. That helps tremendously. One guy you got to highlight, one of the best defensive linemen in college football, and Trey White, posted 12.5 sacks. This guy, you got to know him, because he's going to be a Sunday guy, and he's going to be by far the biggest piece of this defense and leader on this team. And if he can get it going, maybe the defense can get it going a little bit, and all of a sudden San Jose State is way more notable than a lot of people think. You return 10 out of 11, like I said, and a lot of this unit can leap forward, and San Diego State fans are kind of convinced that they can. I think Lewis and company can get back to a bowl game. I really do. I know their win total's not high. I think it stands at 4.5, like JP said, which we'll get into later. But the schedule, I kind of like it. You go on the road at Wazoo week 2, but then you go on the road week 4 at NIU. That's a winnable MAC game. You do get Boise and San Jose State at home. I think they can get to 6-win, boys. Am I far off? What are your thoughts, Jake?
It's kind of interesting, because they kind of pointed the fingers at the defense last year for their problems, but the offense
was bad.
Their offense was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I like Sean Lewis, and what he did at Kent State was damn near impossible. But like, how many times are we going to keep giving him the benefit of the doubt? Because kind of like Colorado State, this is a team and fan base that's like, they're not going to tolerate anything less than 6 wins as a Pac-12 team now. So something's got to work. I don't know. And if it doesn't, I don't know if it'll work out for Sean Lewis. Maybe this is just kind of one of those weird things that just never was put together.
JP, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this one, if you're going to be an offensive guru, it's got to pop. You're in the right market for it. It's the right kind of place for it. I mean, this is the opposite of what Fresno State's doing. They're going from slug it out, play in the trenches, to spread it out and be a little more athletic. Just hasn't popped yet. And I'm curious on how much tougher it's going to get in the next couple of years.
All right, there it is. That is San Diego State. That is all the teams in the Mountain West. Let's move it on down the line. Let's go conference championship game picks and predictions. Who's going to make the game? And then if you got a gut feeling, I know picking it's hard enough. Who's going to win it? Jake, I'm throwing it on you first.
Yeah, I just unless Maddox Madsen just takes a giant step back. Like, is there really anybody else but Boise State? But now I'll give you who they're playing because it could be interesting. I think it's San Jose. I got San Jose versus Boise in my Mountain West title game, and we'll find out if that Ken Niumatalolo team is legit because they don't see anybody on their schedule, like we mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think you're really reaching that too far out of the box. I had the same matchup, and honestly, I was going back and forth on Boise based on their schedule. But understanding, I think they're good enough in the Mountain West to just kind of run what the Mountain West is based on brand and how they play alone. They don't beat themselves. I think that goes a long ways within these smaller conferences. I don't want to give anything away, Parks, if you had a different matchup on your end.
I did, but I kind of went, I mean, it's chalk, right? Like I previewed UNLV. I know you guys have talked about how easy San Jose State's schedule is, but I mean, UNLV 122nd in the country in strength of schedule. It ain't that hard either. I mean, they get a lot of their games at home.
UNLV had their chance. I know they would have seen each other in the title game again last year, but UNLV had their chance at home in that middle of the October game. Like that was the one you could have stolen from Boise.
For sure. Yeah, I just didn't.
That's my
for me.
That's my
just,
pick. Boise and UNLV. Sorry, go ahead, JP.
Yeah, I was just saying it's tough for me to read UNLV right now. I feel like I read the other two better in these conferences that have gotten a little.
You know more
as a part of that.
You definitely know more.
I'll take the easy schedule. No divisions.
All right, there it is. That's a conference championship game picks and predictions. Any bold takes out there quickly before we go to our favorite over/under win total? No bold picks. We're not forced to have one.
Is it hot to say like I think San Jose is going to go undefeated in conference play?
Okay, I don't know if that's hot, but
I'd like to see a Mountain West win total for them.
It's 6.5 or your Mountain West win total, not okay. 6.5, 7.5 is
probably around there then, assuming they lose non-cons, right?
Oh, they could be Stanford. Yeah.
Let's go to favorite over under win total. New segment, a part of our previews to wrap things up. If you have a team, pick a team, give us their over under win total. You obviously have the reasons why. We just previewed every team in the conference. JP, give me yours first.
Yeah, go over on Air Force. They're going back to bowl games. That's 5.5.
Good pick.
All right. Like over on Air Force. Jake, what do you have?
Could you take a guess?
Yeah.
San Jose State's over?
Yeah, let's go over San Jose State 7.5 wins total in their season, minus 125. An undisclosed book was also given a boost, and I think I'm going to use it to get that plus 100. So
there you go.
I kind of gave mine away too. San Diego State over 4.5. I think they get bowling. It's a bold pick. I guess that could have been in bold predictions, but I think Sean Lewis and his new quarterbacks get to a bowl game this year. He's got the offensive talent. He did it at Kent State. You see the dumpster fire that place is now. He's got the ability to do so. He gets to a bowl game. That's only 6 wins, people. So those are our favorite over-unders. That is
I got an under. Oh, sorry. I had an under.
You have both. You're a sick.
I have an under, but I love my over more.
I do love my over more. We were just talking about it. Like somebody's got to lose games. I think it could be San Diego State.
Ooh.
What a loser. And honestly,
did you listen to the preview, Jake?
I did. It was a good preview. You almost persuaded me, but honestly, at plus 105, if you're looking for good value, I think like 4-8 fits this San Diego State group. If like things just don't mesh again,
they bake in the sun in that stadium that was built incorrectly. It could be
10 starters back on defense. Jordan Sully's coming in here to say Stanford Steve's favorite quote. Bad production coming back. Returning production doesn't always mean
return talent or something like that. Yeah.
All right, JP, give us your under.
Yeah, I thought about the Boise State one, but I'm looking at it and go, they're not losing 2 Mountain West games. They got a tough out of conference. Under 4.5 Utah State. I think you're a year or two off. I think some of these will hit, but I just think there's too many question marks.
All right. Those are good over-unders. I did not particularly pick an under. I thought it was one or the other. However, I will give a quick notice that I did not give earlier in my preview, but I did write this down for one of my teams. Let's talk about San Jose State, Jake. I understand there's a lot of overhaul at the school, but the schools kind of control the identity, at least after the first transfer in the FCS. Watch out for the Vandals in week 2. You might get got on your over there. Ask Gordon.
Did you
if they weren't playing in New Mexico?
I was gonna say, did you just listen to my New Mexico preview? That entire roster.
I did. That's why I
plays-
said I understand the overhaul, but still,
Yeah.
if the program can stay around,
They
watch
play in
Riley.
Albuquerque now. The New Mexico Vandals play in Albuquerque now.
All right, that is the full Mountain West preview. We previewed every team. Let us know in the comments what you thought. If we're wrong, if we're right, if we're stupid, if we're ugly, if we're pretty, let us know. We appreciate you being here nonetheless. Shop No Rivals, our great partner over at No Rivals with awesome premium collegiate headwear. Check them out today. Use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping on all of your awesome new hats for tailgate season and college football. That's just around the corner. 44 days is the correct number. We appreciate you being here. Smash the subscribe button. Hit the like button. We love you. We'll see you next time. Jake, take us away.
Play it.